everyone. Sometimes I curse myself with video ideas, and I don't even know why I do these kind of things, considering that I don't know how many of you on my channel play the tabletop, and ranking bloodlines by vibes means that I am extra unscientific, which means that a lot less nerds that are like into mythology of Vampire the Masquerade tabletop are likely to click into this video. Nonetheless, I had this brilliant idea where I was like, this is gonna be a fun way to spend my time, and I can't say that it was, which was I like bloodlines and lesser known spin off of clans for the tabletop Vampire the Masquerade. I should just rank them for the giggles on how much I like them. But you see, when I said I like bloodlines, what I meant is I like fully fledged bloodlines like the Salubri, or Kiesid, or Bali. What I did not imply was that I have the knowledge of every single bloodline that has ever come into Vampire the Masquerade, so cue me preparing a shortened down just note document for myself in order to be able to do this video, which took me 5 hours. I'm not kidding. Now, on the upside, because I'm ranking all these by vibes, this is not gonna be that long of a video. It did take me a lot of time to do research, and you may have not noticed, but I am not on any kind of website that does tier lists for this. I am sitting on paint.net, which is my personal preferred paint program in which I sometimes slap the video cards for my videos in order to put it on the screen when I upload to YouTube, because I will just take a screenshot and I will put in a title, and that doesn't take a lot of editing, therefore a program that's not very sophisticated can do so. A lot of tier making websites, they take pictures. There are a lot of coat of arms or beautiful other kind of pictures for most of the bloodlines in Vampire the Masquerade. The issue is I won't remember this many pictures and to what is what, so I thought it would be a lot easier to take the Wikipedia list, put it on screen, to which I am covering a part of it. I can move out of the way. I could have also just disabled my camera, but I'm not that smart. Put it on the side of my makeshift paint tier list, and we're gonna go through every single bloodline one by one, and we're just gonna rank them on the vibes, rank them on the coolness factor. I'm gonna give you a very, very tiny description, which is in my own cheat sheet. So you will see me look off screen a lot. This is because I can't stare at the paint program at the same time as I am staring at my own cheat sheet, which is on a different monitor, because if I will make the paint program smaller, it will actually be too small for me to see all of the bloodlines that are on here, let alone be able to type into it. And I don't want to be constantly switching between two different, files effectively, because this is a paintnet and I have my cheat sheet inside text file. In other words, Mirta's having organizational problems, but I promise you we're gonna have a good time. For all of you that are into tabletops but not into Vampire the Masquerade in particular, I also like how this looks, but I also hate how it slides off my head all the time, but I also don't want to just drown in my own hood. Where was I? Oh yeah. For all those of you that played tabletops, but not Vampire the Masquerade, clans are like your main classes, bloodlines are like subclasses. So effectively what I'm saying is, I did not realize how many tiny little subclasses Vampire the Masquerade has amassed in its like 30 years of existence as a tabletop game. There is a lot. There is a lot. And I'm gonna rank all of them based on how cool they sound and give you like a tiny bit of a definition of them, slash what I wrote down about them, slash my opinion, slash whatever the heck this is. So hopefully it makes for an entertaining video because I just spent 5 minutes explaining to you about what I'm gonna do, which can't be that good. So we're gonna start with like the main clan, Banu Hakim, and all of the bloodlines that are the spin-offs of Banu Hakim the clan. So first of all, we have Asimite anti-tribute. Banu Hakim has formerly been known as Asimite, so Asimite anti-tribute means Banu Hakim that are with the Sabbat, or with the opposite clan of with the opposite faction that the main clan is aligned with. So if you had a main clan that's mostly Sabbat, their anti-tribute would be Camarilla. If you have a main clan that's mostly Camarilla, their anti-tribute is Sabbat. Normally, when we say anti-tribute, we often mean aligned with Sabbat. So Asimite anti-tribute are mixed assassins that can diablerize, unlike regular like Banu Hakim. They eat their eldest ruler every 100 years. The culture's semi-interesting, at least from like the role-playing perspective, but it's effectively just Banu Hakim with nothing else added. So like, it's Banu Hakim with slightly different culture. I'm just gonna put them in E tier, which is barely above S. F? S? Wait, F. F is the bottom, C is middling, S is like super cool. So we're dropping these into E. And yes, I will be typing shit out because it's actually the easiest way that I could figure out to enter information into this sheet. Don't blame me, please. Next up is Bedouins. Bedouins are nomadic North African people that use animalism and war horses. Maybe you want to play nomadic African people, and I won't blame you for that, but that just sounds extra boring to me. So straight into F tier you go. Like, that is literally not like any special vampiric mumbo jumbo. It's just Banu Hakim, but in Africa, they're nomadic and they use war horses. And then you're like, well, that's not all that interesting, honestly. Courtiers. About 24 people, not a lot, that use presence instead of celerity. So they can like make themselves extra noticeable instead of being extra speedy. And forgive me, but speedy is actually a lot more interesting than, look at my aura, look at how much I'm shining, look at me, I am so amazing. Therefore, F tiers, they can go and sit together with their buddy Bedouins in the F tier. We're just like, that's just a really uncool place to be. They're not interesting whatsoever. Maybe someone would be like, yeah, for role-playing purposes, I want to use presence instead of celerity, but there's like canonically 24 people, so you can't even like be like, oh yeah, one of them turned me, and therefore my new character can play in this tabletop as the subclass. There's like nobody out there, so it's hard to even adapt that as like a role-playing perspective. It's just, why? Shango. Sorcerer worshippers of a storm god. Only group of African kindred to use obfuscate, which is make me go invisible. Now, from what I remember about them is that they were like, ooh, so mysterious, and they kind of really embraced that. they are apparently fairly easy to control because of like their bloodlust. So a lot of other kindred tend to like exploit them and bloodline to them. But these dudes are literally like, we like as a storm god, we can go invisible, and we're a sorcerer, and other people think that we're spooky, which is, kind of interesting. So I'm just gonna put them in B tier. If you ever wanted to like roleplay that, I can see the appeal, but that might be my personal preference for occult shenanigans. Speaking out here, sorcerer cast, which is easiest to sum up as Tremere, but make them Eastern. And they belong to Banu Hakim. So they're not an offshoot of Tremere, but effectively, they're like sorcerers, but in the East. There's not much else to them. So, E tier, you go. You can. Sorcerer cast. You don't even get to worship any cool storm gods. You don't get to be the only kindred in Africa to be able to go invisible. There's literally, you're just sorcerers, but make them Eastern. And you're gonna see quite a lot of that. At some point, I'll be even rambling even less about it because of how much you're gonna see it. Vizier cast. Toreador, but make them obsessive compulsive over art and manic. Toreador are the people that kind of like all the pretty things, and they're normally like singers, artists, the creative and expressive types. Well, here's Banu Hakim, they get like really incredibly obsessive over their art, like they must do it. There's like a big obsession. There's just one single track mind, and it is focused onto the art. And they can also get quite manic when they're doing art. Like they enter almost like a creative frenzy of like paints flying everywhere. So might be kind of hard to roleplay them because of how one-track mind they are. But honestly, this description sounds really cool and kind of fun to play with. So Vizier cast, onto the A tier you go. Like just this obsessive compulsive manic artist that has a one-track mind which is focused on art. Yeah, quirky fun character would probably make. Next up, we're in B, which is for Bali. Not everything in here will be in alphabetical order. You will see that we reach Caitiff, and then it's La Sombra. That is because Gangrel went over here. I don't know why I'm pointing. I'm pointing at my own screen, but on like the little filmy thing, it won't be the exact same thing. So Gangrel went in the middle between Banu Hakim and Salubri. Everything's arranged to kind of fit on the screen and never cut off. So from alphabetical point of view, this list is bonkers and all over the place. I am so sorry. But anyways, B is for Bali, and Bali in themselves are a bloodline and not a full recognized clan, so they are a subclass without there being a class, effectively. And they're the devil worshippers. Infernalists normally serve as like a world-ending device. And honestly, cool. For originality's sake, I'm giving them S tier. If you ever play one, everybody without exception wants you dead. And you're playing the bloodline that's meant to be like a plot device for world end. And you're definitely meant to be the bad guy, is what I'm saying. So it's kind of harder to play than something that's meant for you to actually play. But if everybody hates you as an idea is fine with you, and being the spooky ooky devil worshipper sounds appealing, it is very fun bloodline to play, even though it's a lot less OP when it's on players' hands because they don't have access to all the world-ending abilities. They just have access to all of the abilities that kind of betray them for being a Bali which makes every single non-player character and most player characters, unless of course everybody else rolled a Bali, really hate you. So, drama all around. Anyway, I love that bloodline. S tier. It stays in the S tier. So, Azanali are an offshoot of Bali that are devil worshippers, but make them edgy and give them La Sombra powers. There's like a second version of that, but under the La Sombra as the main class, or the main clan, as the classes are called in this game, which are practically the same, but they hate devil worshippers and hunt them instead. So, double edge does not make edge as cool. So when you want to be a spooky tentacle monster and a devil worshipper at the same time, I'm just gonna put you into B tier, because it's like, you know, saying that your blood monster is covered in an extra sheet of blood, or your spiky spikes are covered in an extra line of spikes. It's an extra layer of edgy, and at that point the coolness factor of edgy starts canceling out and it becomes a middle school creepypasta, which we don't appreciate quite as much. Moving on to the Bruja. Bruja as a class or as a clan are normally like the brute force rebel kind of clan. Like they're very much into punchy punch, and typically they're portrayed as very punk-like. That's what you need to know about Bruja. So Bruja anti-tribu, which is Bruja that subscribe to the Sabbat above all else, are Bruja, but Bruja on steroids, which means they're just Bruja, but more violent at being Bruja, which makes them extra uncool because they're just extra Bruja. So Bruja anti-tribu can go to F tier. Asebo is Bruja, but in Africa. They're also extra violent, which is, once again, just Bruja. So you can chill together with your Bruja anti-tribu brethren right there in F tier together. You know, have a nice family, chill, relax, share ideas. Enjoy your steroid-induced powers. Now, true Bruja are more like the philosophers of old. Like, you know, when you imagine Plato and all those old philosophers that are like, the true power is in the unification of body and mind, and we're gonna be like, you know, strong, and we're also gonna be brainy. But they're also emotionally cold to a point where they can be called sociopathic or psychopathic, calculating, and in general, they will be a very wise person, like a very philosophical person, while also being quite strong. You know what sounds very chilling and very scary, and a lot of storytellers don't like you to use true Bruja and won't allow you to use true Bruja because, once again, it's a kill on sight sort of bloodline, and secondly, they're completely emotionless, which makes them extra, you know, they're not gonna super care if you take like a human mortal that they're supposed to be imprinted upon. They're not gonna like have a full breakdown, they're not gonna cry. It's like playing the Terminator. Except that the Terminator is now a philosopher. It's the best way that I can explain. So, S tier, they're very unique and very interesting and very different from their like main clan, or otherwise known as main class. As a subclass, makes them very fun. Definitely recommend, even though most storytellers won't actually let you play it. So now we arrive at Caitiff, and Caitiff is Build-A-Bear of Vampire, which is, they don't really show specific clan weaknesses or strengths, all that much normally, and you can pick whatever abilities that you can choose. Other clans tend to kind of look down upon them because they're just like clanless rebel. It's just build the bear a vampire, and well, their only offshoot, which I am now scanning my notes, yeah, Panders. They're entirely free from clan weaknesses, but they're also Sabat's bottom rung. It's cative, but they get a special name and get recognized as something, I guess. Not very cool, not very interesting, does not offer us anything more than we already had. So off to the F tier, you can go and chill. I can't promise you that this line will ever be clean and neat and tidy, because whenever I press and start typing again, I tend to start typing at a different level than the previous word was at, which is a bit annoying. But anyways, moving on, Gangrel, which is our furries of the vampire community. Effectively, their class bane or like class weakness is that they start physically showing parts of an animal as they go along. So, like, they could have wolf ears, they could have whiskers, they could have cat eyes, they can have claw, you know, that sort of thing. Eventually, they just physically develop it and they just kind of have to live with it. And they can talk to animals, they can use the ability to turn themselves into like a wolf or some stuff like that. That is like, they're the very wild ones. So, from the offshoots of Gangrel, we have Arimance, which is Gangrel, but make it feminist, followed by Gangrel, but make them magical and spiritual. Like, effectively, there was two waves of this. The first one was like a woman that was very scorned and she wanted to avenge her own injustice and then wanted to avenge the injustice of other women, and then that died out. And then in the second wave, it was effectively a Gangrel woman, but she was being whispered to by the spirits, possibly by the first Gangrel. So they're all. She's very spiritual, okay? Which is. It's alright, but it feels like it's a bit confused as to what it wants to be. So Arimance can land itself in the D tier. It's not entirely sure what it is, but it is. So I guess there's that. Now, Akunanse, which is African wise folk. Well, they exist. I don't really want to put them into the F tier because, well, at least they have the African part going for them, and at least they have the wise part going for them. So if you ever like wanted to play like a shaman, but make it African, I suppose this is where you can go. You can definitely make a very, very unique vampire. So not very heard of, you know, but it is what it is. You can share the D tier. There isn't a lot of things in the D tier, and they do have the African and wise folk parts going for them, which is nice. And Mongolian tribe home-grown Gangrel also should be extinct by this point, but effectively they kind of spontaneously occurred as like a part of a tribe, and then they fed off their own tribe mates and they hunted a different tribe because they didn't like that tribe, I guess. And over time, they died out. And that's about all there is to say for them. So, unless you are into Mongolian politics of the Middle Ages / Dark Ages, I don't really see a reason for looking this way. City Gangrel is Gangrel, but in the city. Country Gangrel is Gangrel, but in the country. Both these are just like, well, City Gangrel will try and blend in with the human society more. Country Gangrel will go a lot more wild and animalistic because they can do it. So I'm just gonna put them both here. they don't fit neatly, and this is gonna irritate me. Move along, move along. Scoot. What if Anda doesn't have a? There we go. We kind of scooted almost close enough in order to fit in here, which is good enough. They scooted. The words have scooted just for me. Greek gangrel is the old city gangrel, but they used the sewer system because they couldn't look more human and they could go invisible. So they were super friends with the Nosferatu and they liked to live in the city and, kind of chill in there, which is, I suppose, a bit unique, but it's not all that interesting. So, sewer gangrel slash Nosferatu buddies slash gangrel that can go invisible can go chill in the E tier, which is kind of a bit above F. They have something going for them, but they're a bit meh. Now, Leonin, matriarchal druids engaged in spirit work, unable to leave their territory without becoming weak. Pretty cool. Pretty limited, but pretty cool. So you have a lot of descriptive words going for you, hence why crazed old-timey druid people that can sometimes be spotted in Europe's forests that also have a matriarchal society, but they can't actually leave their forest all that much. They can go into the B tier. They're interesting enough. There's something different. So now Marino gangrel. Gangrel but underwater. There's about not a lot of them. I forget the exact number. But I think the lore cited something like 20. The most apparently was 4 of them in a singular lake. They just normal gangrel, but they make the decision to live underwater for reasons unknown, and then over time, because they're eating fish, presumably, instead of developing a cute furry wolf tail, they develop shark fins, which eventually make them fairly monstrous and unlikely to leave the water. I do have quite a few questions, for example, how did they communicate? And I assume most of the times they just don't. that's my. I mean, they can mimic sharks. They can make shark noises. So I don't know. Maybe they do the whale beep boops. How did they communicate? Upgrade them to D tier. That is just such a. It's a weird anomaly, but at the same time, it's just gangrel but underwater. So at the same time, they're kind of a bit interesting, but not too interesting. Now, Noyad are gangrel but Finnish, or quite specifically, it was gangrel that originated in part of Finland. They ate from their tribes and they wanted to protect their tribes. And over time, they went extinct because they pushed their tribes away from larger amounts of people in order to continue their control over those tribes, and eventually they pushed their own tribes into extinction by doing that, and as such ended up with no food source and died out. It's about as interesting as homegrown Mongolian vampires. There's not much to them. Now, let's go to the Hekata line, which is just a whole bunch of necromancer vampires, effectively. A very whole bunch of necromancer. There's a lot of necromancer vampires. They used to be known as different things, but then V5 just kind of put them into one singular big group, class grouping, and in this game it's called the clan. So they all got kind of united into the Hekata name, which made some of them a lot less interesting, but we can talk about that later. So, Dunsern. It is a UK family focused on making money with rare occasions of producing much undesired werewolves. Effectively, they are like a subset of the Giovanni family, but like Giovanni are like both money-making and necromancers, and then Duncern, which kind of align themselves with the Giovanni, are just kind of rich UK people. And normally, rich UK people would go at the F tier, because there's nothing cool about that. But as a background for a werewolf character, not a vampire character, they can just, they land themselves a D spot, okay? That makes them interesting. I debated E with myself, but I think we're gonna give them the D. Okay. But maybe don't dick them, literally. You have 1 in 100 chance of producing a werewolf baby, and you wouldn't want that to happen, now would you? They don't like their werewolf babies, so if they identify their babies as being werewolf, the first werewolf transformation tends to happen when one is an adult. They tend to put down their own babies if that happens. So if one of them just kind of spontaneously goes rah and turns into a werewolf, they don't get to become a vampire. They get to be put down. That's how the family runs. But some of those werewolves like escape and then continue on to become characters inside like a werewolf game. So beautiful background for your misfit werewolf character. Very interesting. Other than that, not interesting at all. I will not be editing all of my speech mistakes because I can't be arsed. This is gonna be a very long video as it is. So adore at all of it works. Harbingers of Asher. Necro gang that can A, have a corpse for a touchstone, and touchstone is something that you care very deeply about, especially in version 5, and it absolutely normally has to be a mortal human, so being able to have a corpse for a touchstone, already interesting. B, be a wraith inhabiting a vampire body. This is like the only subset that like has that as like a possibility, and it is an ability that you have to buy, and it makes you like extra susceptible to like the otherworldly attacks. So you take a dice minus to that, but come on, that is a very cool background of like you as a ghosty just like stole a vampire body and you're like don't question me, please. And C, they have the ability to kill others in Clan Hecata freely, because they used to be like super anti-Giovanni, and then Giovanni merged into Hecata, and then they were like, our kill orders actually weren't quite just about Giovanni, they kind of meant any necromantic kindred, yeah. So not quite the S tier material, but I'm definitely gonna put them in the A tier material, because come on, just the being a ghosty inside the vampire body, come on, that is such a cool background. I totally would want one of my characters to have that background. And just the fact that with this like clan, with this like bloodline, the developers quite specifically mention like that is just a thing that you can buy on your sheet. You can be a ghosty just living in a vampire body. That is like perfectly fine. This is gonna kill me. This lack of alignment. Screw it. Words everywhere. Hodgepodge. Ugh. La Famiglia Giovanni, a rich Italian necromancer family. Kinda cool if you wanna roleplay Italian, but because they are so widely known and kinda your baby's entry point for a necromancer family, they get the C tier. They're just kinda, meh. I give them a 5 out of 10. You can probably do funny Italian mafia voices and roleplay a family if you really wanted to. Alamia, guardian Lillicians, like they follow Lilith, the demon, with disease-spreading bite. can paralyze with their gaze. I think most of them are extinct. But for a while, in the Dark Ages, they were like a thing. And I'm wondering, should for the most part being extinct give them a D? You know what? I'm already on the C. They can have the middling range. They have some cool aspects to them, but also they spread disease. They're mostly not there. You can still kind of play them in V5, but it's more like conscious effort to spread disease now because you're now part of a bigger clan Hecata. So yeah. But yeah, milliner. USA family focused on making money. Once again, like semi-part of Giovanni. They kind of allied themselves with them, and apparently Giovanni were kind of mean to them, but Milner were very good at making money. Unfortunately, making money does not a cool vampire ability make, so there you go. You don't even produce cool werewolf progeny 1 in 100 births. So you don't even have that going for you, which is not nice. Mla Ovatu, which is persecuted scholarly African and not so African necromancers, mostly because you're supposed to respect the dead. Instead of just talking with the spirits, they put the spirits into Zambambo bodies, they raise the zombies, which makes them kind of hated in the territory. They apparently don't always look very African, which suggests that they are not from the continent originally. So they're a thing, and that description kind of sounds cool. So I considered the C tier, and I decided that actually they're B tier material. They're not like so super, what the hell am I typing? Vlatu, not Vate. They're not so cool that I would like really want to love to play them. Like 10 out of 10. Coolest bloodline ever. But they're also kind of above average. Like I can see the appeal of that. That has like a lot of history behind it, like a lot of lore. You can definitely do a thing and stuff. Nagaraja. Mages that self-made themselves into vampires and now have to eat flesh to survive. We're sitting on B tier. We may as well throw Nagaraja in here. Now, mind you, if they ever like, if a sub-clan person assimilates into the clan, because all of these like bloodlines got just like whooshed, smooshed together into one Hecata family in V5, they just get the bane of their bite is now painful, so they dropped the need to eat flesh bit if your character ever does that, which makes them a lot less cool. But on the base premise of they were mages, they were losing a war, and they were like, shit, we really need something a bit better than liches. Them vampire things are pretty cool, but I don't want to really be a vampire because, well, that's kind of bad. How about I'm gonna steal some vampire blood, okay? And I'm gonna ask my gods to cleanse it, and then I'm gonna kill myself by slitting my throat. YouTube, we're not talking about anything real. Please don't demonetize this video. I'm gonna throw myself into that vat of now purified blood. And I'm gonna rise a vampire. And all will be very cool. Except that it didn't completely turn out that way because choosing to be a vampire, even of the purified blood vampire type, is apparently really bad for your karma. So flesh eating, here we go. It's kind of a thing. So Rossellini are just like Giovanni, except they're a lot more sadistic. So they're sadistic Italian necromancers, which doesn't differentiate them all that much outside of, yay, violence. So on the list of vibes, maybe they're interesting enough to not be complete F tier, but honestly, not very cool from my perspective. My wish to ever play that is like a 2 out of 10. So E tier, they go. Puttanesca. Italian mafia, but make it street criminals. Like they're low-life pimps and money launderers, and they were kind of part of Giovanni, but then Giovanni were like, it is bad if we're like perceived as low-life street criminals, right? So we're just gonna take all of these people that engage in these things, gonna put them in a box. I'm gonna pat the box, like very, very good box. I'm gonna call them something different. And then it's not on us, but they're still like affiliated with us. But it's not on us. Honestly, that is so not cool as a descriptor that just F tier you go. I was like, is it worth clicking out of E tier? Because now I will have to struggle to align everything again. And you know what? It is definitely worth clicking out of E tier for this. I don't like it. It's boring. It's just Giovanni, but they rebranded a part of Giovanni just so that they don't need to consider them to be a Giovanni, which does not a legitimate thing make. So, Samedi, zombies, but make them vampire. Effectively, they're like forever rotting, and they're falling apart. And it is implied that at one point they will probably completely fall apart and die. And if they don't, that is sad in a whole different way, because that would mean that they would fall apart until they're just this one bone and literally nothing else. Like, imagine a shin bone, but it's still alive and it still wants blood. How would that even work? I don't know, but they're like forever rotting, so that can't be good. That implies an expiration date. Now, they're also loosely tied to African Americans and the practice of voodoo. A lot of Semitic kind of come from that community, but then they kind of spread, and now they're embracing a lot of morticians, people that work with death, people that are okay with death, and people that have accepted their own death and kind of are fascinated with death because, well, you know, I suppose what else are you gonna embrace into your subclan when you're perpetually rotting? You kind of need somebody that can accept the perpetual rot bit. I would put them at S tier, but in V5, because the developer team is really against creative ideas, I suppose. Well, they have assimilated into the other clan Hekata, and now they don't have that issue anymore. They have, like, regenerated, and now they're just basic bitches, because what else are they gonna be? Oh, but they're, like, more of a CSI type vampires. They're, like, really good at investigation, and they still, like morticians, so they're still, like, tied to death. But bleh, the whole zombie aspect is, like, majority of a reason to ever play a Semitic. So anything before version 5 Semitic, S tier. Version like 5 Semitic, F tier. To make it fair, the Semitic that haven't been the version 5 Semitic for like good 20 out of 30 year existence of theirs, I'm gonna be nice and put them at A instead of like trying to middle them out. See, they're still very cool. Just in V5, they're not so cool. So, Samedi, go here. I actually don't know what version they first appeared in. It could be that they were not in version 1. I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, they were definitely in version 20 and probably definitely in version 3, considering that version 20 pulled from previous versions. And the zombie vampire is cool. Very cool. Now we're moving to La Sombra, which I know we're jumping from like one side of the list to the other, but once again, I made it fit. I made it fit on the screen, and that was hard enough, so please don't blame me. La Sombra are like your tentacle shadowy people. Like, they can make shadow tentacles, they can merge with the shadows, They're very much into like oblivion and blackness and shadows and tentacles and teleporting, and they don't really cast a reflection. And in newer editions, the technology just kind of, them and technology don't mix, yes. Like technology explodes around them or some shit. So anyway, that is kind of what La Sombra are. So now let's look at the subclasses, or otherwise known as bloodlines or subclans. Call it whatever you want. Angelus Ater, which is La Sombra, but make them Bali. We already know what Bali are. Bali are devil worshippers. And include Infernalist hunting into their activities. So they have Infernalist power, but they hunt Infernalists because they hate them and they're kind of very Christian. And some of them apparently sometimes become full-fledged demons that still go after cultists and after infernalists and all that bad rabble. I don't want to say that it's so cool that it is A tier, but I will give them a B tier at least. They're pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, and Jealous Ater can occupy the B tier very, very safely. I wouldn't mind playing one. It's just kind of interesting motivations, interesting powers. Cool. Hyacinth. Half Fae, super tall as Sombra, concerned with ancient lore. They live solitary lives. The half Fae aspect is very important because this is what happens when like La Sombra eat a Fae and kind of experiment with the blood while doing so, more or less. Because their founder went on a funny adventure. Like, he started as a La Sombra, he done some funny stuff to himself, he turned it out to be half Fae. There is a completely different subset, which is created from Fae by some unhappy accident, being turned into various different types or various different classes of a vampire. That is a completely different subset, and you're not supposed to mix them up. So Kisset, considering that they tend to be like 7 feet tall, and their skin tone like tends to even be with things like completely blue, and they have Fae abilities and an obsession over like finding and collecting mythology, but are also like really solitary and reclusive. It is a very, very unique idea, and it is the kind of bloodline that, it's not just gangrel in the city or gangrel in the country. They're actually like their own unique thing. So in my opinion, entirely S tier. Would love to play that. Sounds very interesting. I wish that a lot more bloodlines were like this kind of its own thing. La Sombra anti-tribute. La Sombra, but not in Sabbat. And then at some point, when La Sombra joined Camarilla, and they become like 50% in Sabbat, 50% in Camarilla, whichever La Sombra is the anti-tribute, I think depends on which one you ask. So, in other words, very boring. And they can say hello to our F tier buddies. They can all have a party together. Zidundu, which is La Sombra, but make them African. Also, they can't touch their own native soil when resting because they got cursed. That is... I want to say that's not like so unique that I'm so tempted to put them in B tier, but it's not like super unique, but I like the extra curse bit. And they're like super into power and expansionism and stuff like that, but that's just La Sombra. La Sombra kind of power hungry. So, continuing on. Malkavians, which is the either the crazy clan or the clan that can see visions that describe to them the past and the future, and like very, divinatory and connected to God and very spiritual. And normally, they kind of have issues with their mental state because how would if effectively imagine that you're like a seer and you see interesting things all the time. So effectively, you live your life with hallucinations, and sometimes those hallucinations come from you, and sometimes they're like inspired by higher beings. It would really crack your mind at some point, and that's a lot how Malkavians are. So dominate Malkavians. Their derangements are normally more internal, like sociopathy, obsessive compulsive disorder, though I actually don't know what kind of mental derangement would be external. But who am I to argue with the writers of the game? They don't have dementate, aka they can't make other people go crazy. They only have dominate, which is they can control other people. And they have no prophetic wisdom, which just makes them a lot like Ventru, which is the blue blood king control-y type of vampires that are like super into power, but like they sound a bit scary because their clan ain't supposed to do what they're doing, which is instead of being a bit cray cray, instead they're able to control other people, which makes them scary. And most clans don't believe that they exist, even though non-dominate Malkavians can warn other clans of dominate Malkavians, but other clans like, oh shucks, that's not a thing. So they get onto the D tier purely for being scary. But other than that, they're not that interesting. Now, next one is Malkavian Anti-Tribute, which is Malkavians, but skilled at psychological abuse. Does that raise them out of F tier? I'm gonna give them an E tier purely out of whimsy, but maybe they actually belong in the F tier. Either way, they're not all that interesting. Like they're better at weaponizing their own madness than like their cameral counterparts, and therefore they're very good at like torturing other people and stuff like that. And okay, they practice divination through murder. Like they used to be one of those people that used to like read the future from what kind of guts fall out onto the table. And that is a real divinatory art. But now they like embrace people from the serial murder type. And they see the future inside the murder. I don't know how to put it in any other way. I'm gonna give them a D tier for being an interesting idea because I mean, reading divinatoring from guts is a thing, but at the same time, bleh. I personally just wouldn't play one. It's not that cool. Now we approach the clan grouping that is the ministry. I don't know how to even describe the ministry. I don't think I understand it fairly well myself. So I'm gonna describe them, probably completely incorrectly, as party cultists. I don't know what to make out of them. So that's what they're gonna be. So they have such you know that this is gonna be good when I can't even describe the main class. I'm not gonna be trying to describe subclass to the ministry. It's gonna go great. It's gonna go absolutely great. So, Daitia. Settites, but make them Hindu, with desires to end the world in order to reboot them. Like they worship Shiva as the destroyer, and they're like, if the world fucks up enough, Shiva's just gonna walk in and it's gonna like destroy the world, and then a new one will be made, and you know what? Shit's fucked. Maybe that's what should happen. They get confused for Bali quite a lot in their region because, well, the Balis are also world-ending events, so they very much are aligned with that. But honestly, they're not that interesting. So I'm gonna give them like a 5 out of 10. You can definitely like play one, and you can be like, they arrived from the east to the west, and they're now like in the western country, and they're keeping their the feelings and true goals to themselves, but you're kind of just playing a world-ending event, but you don't even get the cool and friend list abilities, so I don't know what you're doing. You may as well be playing a Bali. Warrior Settites. What it says on the tin. They have potence, which means they can hit hard, which makes them just really boring. So, sorry, I can hit hard, and I'm the warrior part of the bigger part of my class, like my clan, my buddy group, my whatever I'm aligned. It's not that interesting. It's a fairly basic bitch description, and they do fairly basic bitch things, okay? Serpents of the Light. Settites, but give them an alliance with the Sabbat, make them African Americans with religious beliefs in voodoo. I don't know what to make of them. I'm gonna give them a D tier just because I'm being nice. But it's a little bit like, we're religious in this one particular space, and we like the Sabbat. Bleh. It's even below average for me. Tlasic. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Tlasic. Settites, but make them Latin American and give them protein so they can hit hard. They only embrace those of Native American lineage because they're super uber about that revenge shit of they did not like their lands being taken away from them, which I understand, buddy, but not only would I not want to play one, I am not entirely sure that I would want to play with somebody playing one. So the premise is okay, but you can play the exact same premise by like taking something as basic bitch as a bruja and be like, yeah, mate, I am a Native American. I hate the fact that my people got colonized. I got turned into this punk rebellious type vampire, and I'm gonna be going on a hating spree. Like, you can totally homebrew this without it being its own bloodline, which makes them very not fun and very not original. Nosferatu, which is take vampire but make it ugly, kind of like, the movie that of Nosferatu, where the guy was bald and had like spiky ears and like long nails, and he was all white and like so like that. But their deformities can be very unique. Like, you can have a very thin-skinned Nosferatu. This kind of looks like you took a layer of skin, you like stretched it over their skull. That would count. That would count as a Nosferatu. You can have one that has growths everywhere. You can have one with a snout. You can have one with like an elephant trunk. You can have one with like extra fingers and effectively like any kind of deformity that you can think of, you can put it on a Nosferatu and perfect. And here you go. It definitely fits. So, Guruhi, rulers of Africa. Their bane changes their appearance depending on their virtue, standing, and mood. So they can fluctuate between looking beautiful and monstrous. And you know what? It's not something that I would personally be like super excited to play, but it almost sounds more interesting than their main like clan that the Wikipedia believes them to be an offshoot from. So like to me, they sound even more interesting than the Nosferatu because they're like their whole body is like a mood ring. Can you imagine how much fun you can have with that? So they can go pretty high up. Niktuku, Nosferatus that hunt other Nosferatus that are not of the bloodline because they are aligned with the creator of the clan and they're like his attack force. And he hates all of his other brood that are not like bloodbound to him. So he's like, go and kill them in mass. Which is a Nosferatu, but a murder hobo. You can, considering that you would need to infiltrate your own clan to even do that, and that the clan of Nosferatu is very much on the lookout for Niktuku, the role-playing capabilities there are kind of interesting enough for me to put it one bit above F tier, but it's not something that I would personally like to play. To me, it's Nosferatu, but they're like super buddy-buddy with the clan founder, which is boring. Nosferatu anti-tribute. Nosferatu but Sabat. And apparently because their appearance is a lot more accepted and they don't need to hide it, they're kind of a lot more like mentally well-balanced. And their whole shtick is that they're going to war with their founder. And the Sabat is very, good choice for that. Because that's what Sabat does. It's like annihilating all the third generation elder vampires to release everybody from being like the slaves to their masters effectively. And they would be like the anti-Niktuku, which I suppose from the story perspective might be kind of fun to play. So I'm gonna be nice to them and I'm gonna put them at E tier next to Niktuku. It's effectively like playing two sides of the same coin. You are either hunting your Nosferatu brothers as Niktuku, or you like hunting Niktuku and the founder as Nosferatu anti-tribute. Like, pick one and go with that. Ravnos, which is the correct word for this is now traveler, but I feel like it doesn't quite encapsulate what you want to say because gypsies were called gypsies because these people were originally misinterpreted to be of Egyptian origin, but gypsies that are called gypsies and, for example, Irish travelers are two very different groups. But now, in order to be politically correct and not mislabel people with what is increasingly becoming a slur, we're calling gypsies travelers, and now we're mushing two people that are only connected by the fact that they're nomadic into one category, which is the travelers. It's a whole problem on its own, and I'm on this rant only because Ravnos can best be described if we wanna be politically correct as a clan that originated from being kind of the traveler variety, but also not the Irish traveler variety. So like they're more from the same grounds where like gypsies, non-Egyptian gypsies came from. Is the best way that I can explain this. And their clan bane is that they can feel their clan creator chasing them, or at the very least, something really ominous chasing them. So they have to be on the move all the time. And that's like the best way that I can explain them. So now for their subclasses or bloodlines. Brahman slash Puri Day, these are two different places geographically, but they're connected because they both use aspects instead of fortitude. So they can take a closer look at things, but they have a thinner skin and can get hurt more easily because fortitude makes you able to take more damage. So, not that interesting, if you ask me. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna put them down as Brahman. Brahman? Brahman. And then you know what? Puri Day can be on its own line. There we go. You all get to be blessed by boring. You are boring. Hear my decree. Thank you for coming to this TED Talk. Moving on. Ravnos anti-tribute. Ravnos but make it Sabbat. Known for making agreements set in blood and taken incredibly serious by other members of the same clan. So they're like even more serious about holding their word to their own clanmates of Ravnos of any kind than a regular Ravnos. Do I put them? They're gonna get leveled up to E tier just because F tier is getting so full. So they get leveled up a little bit. There was at one point a point in Ravnos history where they got ravaged by insanity and hunger, and it was called the Week of Nightmares, but it like lasted for a longer time, and they just really wanted to eat each other because like their founder kind of just wanted to destroy them all or something. Like I'm not super the whole lore thing just didn't stick in my brain. But anyway, the important bit is that they went entirely cray-cray and they started trying to eat everybody and everything in the vicinity, especially if the other Ravnos were in the vicinity. So apparently Ravnos anti-tribute were the least damaged by this because they were part of the Sabbat, and Sabbat packs don't like take look at clans or subclasses all that much. Everybody just gets put together with everyone else, like you're living in one big communal group. So chances are every Ravnos was traveling with like 3 non-Ravnoses. So when they saw their mates starting to completely lose their shit, they kinda tied them down and held them down until they became better again, which stopped them from eating a whole bunch of people and stopped them from eating themselves and causing damage to themselves. So they went through that whole bit a lot better than all of the Ravnos that were not part of the Sabbat. Kinoini. That's something I can't pronounce. I'm sorry. Probably don't even know what I'm be trying to pronounce right now. But anyway, I definitely can't pronounce that. And if you just wanna see where it is, let me just switch off my camera. It's like right at the bottom of the list. It's right behind me. So if you can figure out what that says, Kinyoni? What does that mean? How is that pronounced? Please call me. I would love to know that, but maybe not literally. I'm actually quite afraid of phone calls. Type me a nice YouTube comment. That would be a great gift. Ravnos, but in Africa. They were like messenger people that ran between tribes and cities, and you could hire them for a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then the whole madness thing descended, and they had literally no idea where it came from. And now they're kind of afraid of being around other vampires because they're like, is this gonna happen again? What just happened to me? That was horrible. I also ruined my clan's reputation. So there's that. I'm gonna give them a D. Because, the whole Africa thing, they have their own culture going. So that's what's carrying them for the most part, but they're not. The setting is interesting. They themselves are kind of boring. So now, Salubri, they were clan at one point, got demoted afterwards when Tremere convinced everybody else that they should be blood hunted for being soul eaters when they kind of weren't soul eaters, but we're gonna get to one subset of them that literally became soul eaters. But anyway, so they got lied, and then they started getting really hunted down, and their population like super shrunk. And if you ever played them in V20, and I am playing them in one V20 in one of my games, they have like no offensive abilities at all. Like you can invest in regular human shit, like throwing a punchy punch or shooting a weapon, but from like their own vampire abilities, not a single one of them is offensive. You can like look at things. I think you can like fortify your skin to take less damage, or you can heal madness, heal wounds, heal so many different things, but like what you're good at is healing. And everybody is hunting you down, kind of like with Bali, but at the same time, some Salubri have been taken in by the Sabbat. Zemits, in particular, are very kind to them and accepting, and they're very likely to take a Salubri because Salubri had the whole slight done to them by the Tremere, and Zemitsi hate the Tremere, so they're kind of unified by like a shared enemy. And in V5, they're like a legitimate playable thing, and the whole shtick is that they are part of Sabbat because, well, unified hatred for the Tremere. So in V20, everybody kind of theoretically, lore-wise, is hunting you. In V5, everyone that's not Sabbat is kind of hunting you. Like Bali, where everybody unanimously hates you and wants you dead. So, everybody wants you dead, but kind of not as badly as everybody wants Bali dead. So there's that. Anyway, has three-eyed. It has three eyes. The third eye tends to like open up when they're using their abilities and spew blood because why not? And they can heal people. And I think in V5 their blood's like extra tasty, so everybody wants to eat them. But a cute pocket healer, but everyone wants them dead. Effectively, it's what I'm saying. If you ever wanted to like play a bloodline rather than the class, a subclass rather than like a proper class, it's one of those S tier ones that are like very unique that I would totally recommend you to take, and honestly quite cool. So they're up there for me. Nikuluzao, which is African soul-eating salubri that don't have the third eye. They just literally eat souls. They tend to be very much by themselves, and they obviously don't like each other because, well, a whole soul-eating thing. I can't really, it doesn't quite hit the A tier for me. I don't quite want to play them, but it is a very cool idea. So you can just take a nice seat at the B tier. I think that would be cool. Once again, I'm ranking all of this by vibes. So this is what I like. You don't need to share what I like. Salubri anti-tribu. Salubri but Sabbat and very aggressive, especially towards Tremere and the Camarilla. So it's like a Salubri, but you drove the poor healers so crazy that now they want to kill everybody, or more particularly woke the part of the clan that was supposed to be protecting the healers to begin with, and they want to kill everybody. Not super my pot of stuff, but I don't blame you if you ever want to play that. It's kind of, you ask me, it's kind of average. Wu Zhao. Asian salubri without the third eye that work as guardians and protectors of Salot's knowledge, and vampires in Asia. And they also tend to have like a fascination with knowledge. But you removed their third eye. Are they really all that salubri? Salubri in general are kind of cool, so they just get downgraded to D tier, even though maybe they should be even lower than that. But they're not as cool as like proper salubri because they don't have anything like super distinguishable. Like they don't like outright out there eating souls. Like the different part. Like take a note from Africa. Okay, eating soul is a lot cooler than not eating a soul. Toreadors, the very pretty, self-expressive creator vampires. You know, that sort of thing. They're creatives. They're not they're not in the STEM field. They took arts as a major. So their subclasses. Ishtari. Indulgent spy vampires that need a connection to the living and tend to embrace those that are beautiful. They're not entirely like Toreador. They might be entirely unrelated to Toreador, but come on, they kind of developed Toreador qualities, so and just kind of become very Toreador-like. A lot of African kindred, African vampires like shun mortals. They don't really have much connection to mortals. So if you ever wanted to play something that is so like part of the mortal society that they tend to be very much of an outsider to the vampire society in Africa, you can play an Ishtari. If you just ported Ishtari into the West, they would just kind of become a regular Toreador, and considering that the Camarilla as a clan kind of value humanity and the path of humanity, and you are supposed to be close to at least somebody human without like showing that you are a vampire, they would just become very boring and baseline Toreador. But because they're set in Africa, where the rules are kind of different, they become their own thing. Nephilim. Weird religious Christian beauty cult based on their founder, Archangel Methuselah Michael. That is a crazy line of text that I just read anyway. They can stick to being beat here because that lore is just completely off the hinges. It's very, very unhinged. And anyway, if in case you were wondering, Methuselah Michael died, but they are seeing it as him having ascended into the heaven instead of being cursed to exist as a vampire. And they can beautify all other clans. So this is a cult that you can like join, and even as a Nosferatu, you can look like super beautiful. You don't need to be born into this cult, but they're very culty, and obviously because they're worshipping what in the normal religion would be angels, they're very Christian. Weird beauty Christian cult is the best definition that I could have found for you. Toreador anti-tribute. They love to observe suffering as they find it beautiful. Sabbat Toreadors. They are not into regular beauty, they're into just causing suffering. Too edgy for me. And spell the 4-bit as a number and not as a word. So F tier to go. You are free to disagree. I'm going purely off vibes and the coolness factor. Nothing in there is vibing or cool to me. Volgear. They have access to vicissitude, which is the flesh crafting ability. They make art out of flesh. Have rejoined Camarilla in secret, because apparently Toreadors that live for a very long time get very much jaded with a lot of regular art, and they're like, well, what else is there? I saw literally everything that there was to see. I saw the great classical works. I'm kind of ready to be like extra kinky. Like, can you present something new and intriguing to me? And Volgear were like, we would like to get out of the Sabbat. We don't super like it in here, so like provide us a fake identity. Let us pretend that we were always Toreadors, and we're gonna like allow you to understand how you craft the flesh. And the regular Toreadors were like, You go, girl. We're like all for it. This is so amazing. I'm gonna give them a C tier. Effectively, it is a Toreador with a secret identity and an extra ability, because you can buy like the first 2 dots as if it was our in-clan ability. You keep all the other clan abilities as they are, so you can start with 4 in-clan abilities instead of 3, like a normal vampire would. The whole, like, secret identity thing presents an interesting angle for gameplay, because you can be like, oh no, what if they found out that I wasn't originally a Camarilla Toreador? Like, it spins its own story, because you're effectively like, it's like being under government protection. And you have like that extra ability, you like to craft other people's flesh, and that's up to you if you like to be a beautician that rearranges people's bones, or if you're making flesh cubes in your free time in your house. You can use that however you want. So it's a bit more interesting than like just give some steroids to Brua or have Gangrel in the city. But they're like not top tier. They're not like their own thing. They're just like a spin of an existing thing, which I suppose is correct for a subclass. But come on, when we can get so many really interesting things in bloodlines, everything that, just goes a bit underneath that becomes a bit less interesting. So Tremere are the vampire sorcerers, and they kind of wheeled and dealed and drank their way into power. They used to be like human mages, and then they turned themselves into vampires, and that didn't go very well, so they decided to eat some ancient people, and they chose to eat Salubri's clan founder, because they were like, he's gonna fight back the least. At least I'm pretty sure it was Salubri's clan. Yeah, it was Salubri's clan founder. So they ate him, but then the guy that ate him kind of ended up in permanent soul struggle with the soul of this dude. Like, they were just locked in soul combat inside that one body. So from time to time, he would like wake up and give orders to his subordinates, and then go back to sleep to continue fighting for the control of his body with the other soul, and none of them wanted to give up. They have a very unique structure of power, which is a not very unique structure at all, which is they spread down in the pyramid formation, and they go through a rite that blood binds you to the whole organization, not like a one particular vampire. So if your sire dies, you're still like super loyal to the organization. It would be like if you were working for a plant or a fabric factory. That's the right word. I'm sorry, this video has been going on for over an hour of straight talking, and I were preparing the script like 5 hours straight. So, if you imagine if you were working for a factory, and to like incite brand loyalty, your boss got addicted, you addicted to drugs that only the boss can give you. And now you absolutely have to stay with the boss, and you think he's the coolest thing ever. They're very loyal to themselves, but also they have done a lot of dirty things to get there, including like rolling that whole hate campaign against Salubri, mostly because they ate their founder and didn't really want it to face any repercussions for that. So they have 2 different subsets, and both of them are extinct now. So Televalic Tremere, a Dark Ages Tremere that followed Eastern European pagan ways. And like went super druidic, while normal Tremere like super like Western high ceremonial magic sort of way. Interesting, but loses points for being dead. Like super dead. Like, you would not, under any normal circumstances, ever find them in any kind of game. And if you ever wanted to play one, you would really need to explain to your storyteller how the hell you're gonna do that. And then we have Tremere Anti-Tribute, which is marked blood-hunted Tremere that were part of the Sabbat, despite being not allowed to ascend the ranks of the Sabbat because Semitsi hate them. until in 1998, when they all got destroyed by like a mass ritual. These guys got their heads kicked in their whole lives. Like from the very beginning, they were marked as a traitor with like a giant T letter that all other Tremere could see. They could never ascend the organization that they were working for, so they were permanently at the bottom. They got as bad of a cards dealt as they could, and then they died because we can't have nice things and we can't play anything interesting. And yeah. Anyway, if there's a takeaway here, dear people that make Vampire the Masquerade, don't just like remove your bloodlines, because I would like the ability to actually play them, because I don't know why else you would ever include them. Thank you. Moving on. Zemitsi. Think like Eastern European, like Russian, sort of Romanian, that side of the world, royalty that in more modern nights have picked up flesh crafting and have staged the whole like, no, father, I will not follow your ways anymore. And then they split off, and then they were one of the founding members of the Sabbat. So that's Simitsi for you. They have a couple of bloodlines. Naglopers, Libon, African vampires that enjoy giving in to the beast and use torture as a pastime. I have never heard anything that was more just edgy, edgy, edge, 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 edgy, edgy, edge, for absolutely no reason, nor a description that was less inspiring of an actual personality or anything of note. Old clan Zemites. Old Eastern European rulers, think Dracula, that have access to Koldunic magic, so they effectively use spirits of the elements to command them to do shit for them, like rise earth, or like blow wind, or create a fireball, that sort of thing. They shun vicissitude and can program their blood bonds to have whatever emotion they desire the bond to have. Normally, they don't like one another. They will be very courteous, they have great manners, but they don't really trust one another, and they will create like little groups, think Dracula and his brides, of like a couple of people that can like act as their guards and their bodyguards, and then they will like blood bond them to themselves and make them extra loyal. Then like a lover, maybe a wife, maybe a husband, though, you know. Every single thing that they have, like they're hosting those people inside like one area, like a castle, and they all live like one big family, and everybody in that family has a role. So maybe like some Zemits, old Zemits would have like, I don't know, like a lover, and then like a loyal servant slash bodyguard type of dude, and that would be enough for him because he really can't stand people company. Maybe he would have like 7 brides and like 15 bodyguards and like 5 friends because he was feeling extra friendly and was like, yeah, you know what? I really appreciate people. I want company. I want to be running my own harem. And then you were looking, but practically a city worth of vampires, just all living inside one castle. How they feed themselves? I don't know. They probably have influence on the outside. Like, I don't know. Maybe they sell like spooky house excursions and they actually have people coming in by the hundreds and they're like, ooh, tasty free food. That sort of thing. So their circle is as big as they want to be, but like every single member of the circle has a purpose, and they won't really like people from outside their circle, and it's known to be the kind of vampires that go, hey kids, get off my lawn, or like, What's wrong with those youngsters? And they really, really hate the part of the clan that kind of left in order to sculpt. You know what? I was thinking about giving them A tier, but I just realized how much I'm rambling about them, which means that I really, really like their vibe. So they're full on S tier. They're up there. They're definitely up there for me. They're cool. They're cool with me. Moving on to Ventru, which is power hungry vampires. Think kings, royals, princes, famous war leaders, that sort of thing, that have very particular feeding requirements. So somebody might only be able to eat people with blue eyes. Somebody might only be able to eat people that really like programming. Like the amount of things like that are dietary restrictions are as wide as the whole class goes on. So that is pretty wide. Anyway, they have some split offs. The Nava, priestly Indian Ventru that cannot feed on animals at all and must concentrate their human victims to the gods before feeding, as otherwise they will only get half the normal blood points. That is so far divorced from what Ventru is, but they're not effectively. It's like make it Indian, make it religious, but you also have to consecrate your food, but otherwise you don't have food restrictions. So they are interesting, but not so interesting that I want to put them at A tier or above, but just like different enough that they do kind of interest me, okay? Ventru anti-tribute. Knight for the Sapat does not accept failure, sees mortals as cattle, and bears a grudge towards the Camarilla. Also, really fucking boring. So, you go to the bottom, okay? You'll have enjoy the bottom, right? Now, singular bloodlines. This means that they have sprouted mostly out of nowhere, or it is unclear where they sprouted from. Like, they're regular, like what class they are the subclass of is highly debated. If they have a subclass at all, maybe some of them are engineered, for example. Hence why the grouping of singular bloodlines. And for the case of this board, I put them at the bottom. They are at the bottom in the Wikipedia, so they're like this line with me. And my body is probably covering the word that just says gargoyle. So be aware that is there as well. Let's proceed. Blood brothers. Violent hive minds, flesh crafted to look identical in appearance, only ever moving together. Like, think skinheads, but like you have 10 bold dudes. All of them may as well be called Bill. Entirely interconnected by the brain. Don't have much of a personality outside of it. I'm gonna put them at middling. Mostly because they're so bland that you wouldn't play them on their own. Like, you wouldn't really play one blood brother. There's no way to play that. They are a hive mind. But if you were running a campaign about specifically blood brothers, and whole 4 people decided to roleplay effectively the exact same individual and move together as a group and look identical, I think that is a hilarious setup and would be so much fun. So it saves them from much lower tiers, but also that is such a niche use case that they kind of just land in the middle. Bonsum. Hunter bloodline, solitary, embrace other hunters, claim a territory, and ask that all other vampires remove themselves from it, have a horrifying visage. If we could fit into F, they're boring enough for me that I would put them at F, like, their biggest point is that they like to hunt and they like to embrace hunters, but also they like to live entirely on their own and claim a territory and ask that everybody get the fuck out. It's very hard to set that up as anything else than there is a singular Bonsum in your area and he's asking that everybody else get the fuck out. It would be very hard to play that. And the rest of their setup is something between like a Nosferatu and a Gangrel, because they can be fairly solitary and they can embrace people just because they find it fun and they tend to just drop off their children and not care about them the same way as Bonsum do. But at the same time, they have the horrifying visage of the Nosferatu, so it's a bit of a combination of both. Child of Osiris. They can control their beast. And through the control of their beast, they have a unique, discipline, unique power. They can ward off evil, redeem other vampires, raise their humanity and make them less bad, and even resurrect a vampire from final death, though I'm pretty sure that would never be reachable by a player character, but non-player characters to very, very top levels of discipline can do something cool shit like that. It is a non-embraced bloodline, but rather a recruited bloodline from other clans. So it's like a club that you can join and then they teach you the awesome, special, super special stuff. I think because it's more like a club that you can join, that downgrades their how interesting they are. But at the same time, I would totally love to play one. It seems like a softer Salubri. Instead of a healer, you're more like the buff guy. But also you can practically perform miracles. That is pretty cool. Daughters of Cacophony. Singers, sirens, voice users, mostly women because you need to hit very high notes, apparently, very specifically, to do what they do. Anyway, to have a voice-related discipline, if you took a bard and crossbred it with a siren, it would be probably what you get. And I'm thinking, should I put them higher? No, I'm gonna put them B tier. Cool concept. A siren crossbred with a bard. Awesome. But also just the Toreador that sings effectively. They're great at singing, and that's the shtick. So not that super unique, but they can be high up there. Gargoyles. Tremere Stone Guardians. They're vampires that got turned into stone, bonded to the Tremere to protect them, and have had their memory wiped so that they don't know who they are, they can't identify anything of their past memories, they wouldn't be loyal to any kind of past people that they were with or anything else. Yeah, I don't quite know where to put them. I'm gonna give them C tier. Because if you want to play a gargoyle redemption arc, where you're a gargoyle that broke off from your master, because that's a thing. There was a whole gargoyle movement, and a lot of them broke off from Tremere, and Tremere are no longer making gargoyles. For one thing, other clans wouldn't really like it very much. If you want to play a character that is a gargoyle that is trying to recover their memory and figure out who they were and is processing all of their feelings from, being subjugated and enslaved, cool. That is a fairly cool concept. But at the same time, they're not quite a vampire, and they can't really embrace somebody into being a stone monster. So technically they are, technically they're not. It would be like, imagine if you were a vampire, but you were infected and became a tree. Are you still a vampire, or are you a tree person? How do you even rank that? I don't know where to put that, so I'm just, it's gonna stay at the C tier. Impundulu Libon. That just means like the African branch of vampires, effectively. Necromancers that were blood connected to witches. They could only feed from witches of their own family line, which in turn were revenants of the vampire. So, like, effectively a human with like special powers, some vampiric powers. They're born strong already, and they're born like with vampire blood in them. Founding pair bonded to such a degree that the founding pair witch found a way to conceive with a vampire. Even though that should be entirely impossible, and that's how the whole bloodline of their people of Revenant started. But when she passed, and she probably lived a long time because she was a life witch, so she controlled life energy. So you can imagine that probably added some years to her. Like, magic users can live up to like something like, what, 300 years in Vampire the Masquerade universe? So she did live a while, but when she passed, the vampire then refused to feed altogether and wouldn't feed from their descendants because they loved her that much. And the bonds that current in Impundulu, the vampire side, form with their life witches tend to range anything from like friendship to lovers to like, husband and wife. The only issue is that they suffered from heavy inbreeding. And obviously the whole curse of you can only eat from your own family line effectively, that really limits your food choices. So they're not in a good place. I'm pretty sure that they finally kind of sort of started going extinct and that whole thing broke down, but it's just such a romantic story that it really needs to be up there. Just having like really coexisting with a person that's alive and a witch while you're a vampire, but you're like kind of tied like that. It is such a nice little romantic concept, and it is totally an A tier. I don't really know how playable that would be in like an actual game. Like, come on. That is such a cool concept. It's so nice and romantic. Magar. Unhappy little Fey vampire hybrid accidents, or in other words, Fey that became vampires. They got kind of kicked out from being called Kiasid by the Kiasids, and they don't really share any kind of other similarities between one another. Like, they can be various types of Fey that through misfortune kind of got embraced into various types of vampires, and I imagine they're not very happy about it. They don't really fit in with the vampires, don't really fit in with the Fae, and they kind of got kicked out from being called the Kiesid as its own thing. B tier's pretty full. They can have an A tier. They could do with a bit more of like a united identity. It would be like, I don't know, saying people that live down that street, they don't necessarily share anything else in common outside of living down that street. And they're a pretty confused bunch. Pretty poor and confused bunch. Still fun. I like hybrids. I loved The Sims 2's ability to make them when that was a thing, and then it wasn't really a thing by The Sims 3, I believe. Though I don't remember fully. It might just be the Sims 4 thing that you can't make hybrids. But anyway, hybrids are kind of cool. So there's that. I dig hybrids. So it's gonna be at A tier. And the last one, really? Is it? Yes! Guys, it only took me nearly 2 hours to get to the bottom of this list, and this was a shorthand version. And it took me 5 hours to write. Can you freaking imagine? Because I can. Because I just sat here and talked to the camera for like nearly 2 hours straight. And I got a whole bunch of Discord messages that look very important. But I wasn't looking because I was staring at the camera and talking to you guys. So I was probably going to check that out. And I had like so many things to do today. And then I spent like whole 7 hours doing this. I would say you better watch this. But if you're still watching it, then you're dead. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a view because this was torture. But I thought that it would be very fun. Anyway, last one. Remanga. African manipulative shadow users, which is just like La Sombra in Africa. I would put them in A tier, but my F tier is pretty full, so they get E tier. So how did I do? If you're still here, do you agree or disagree? Did I make you hate me? I hope you didn't. I hope we didn't, because like as I said, this is not a scientific ranking. This is me going purely off vibes. And this is what my vibes told me. And I would probably end up vibing a different way on like some other day. Like maybe Baron or Gangrel could maybe climb slightly above. Just because somebody being so stubborn that they're like, no, I'm not getting out of the water, Mom. I'm living here now and eating sharks is a pretty different playstyle. But there was like 20 of them. And I don't really know how you would play that, considering that they're literally refusing to leave the water and that's their whole shtick. So actually, maybe D tier is correct for them. Maybe it is. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you everybody that subscribed to me on Patreon. I normally do a lot more reasonable videos where I tend to speak about video games or play video games, both of which ended up being a lot less effort than this. I don't know what possessed me. I just thought that it would be fun. And I friggin' forgot how many little subclasses there are in Vampire the Masquerade. I did not think with my brain. After like 3 hours of writing notes, I should probably have realized that something is wrong. But no, I didn't. I just kept on going. So anyway, if you have validated my work by actually watching it, thank you so much. And I hope I get to see you in my other videos. Toodaloo.